Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Bigakar Ahmed and welcome to today's video. Today I want to go ahead and check out Double Down News here. He has created a video called The Video Netanyahu Does Not Want You to See. He's talking about the journalists who have gone ahead and been slaughtered and killed in Gaza, in Palestine, and what is going on over the last couple of years here. And he is going to go ahead and calculate the death toll and go ahead and explain why the Israeli government goes ahead and targets these journalists. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into this and expose Netanyahu for his war crimes some more.
Over 200 journalists have been killed by the Israelis in Gaza. That is more than the number of journalists killed in the American Civil War, the First World War, the Second World War, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the Cambodian War, the war in Yugoslavia, the Afghan War, and the ongoing war in Ukraine combined. The Israelis do this for one reason.
So they've killed more journalists than 8 of the largest wars in history. I find this very, very interesting because this tells you and this shows you that they're targeting these journalists. If they weren't targeting these journalists, so many deaths of journalists wouldn't be taking place.
And one reason alone, because they can.
Like, you don't confuse that many journalists for Hamas. You just don't, you know? But we'll let him continue here.
Because they're allowed to get away with it. Because in the way it is reported in the West and in the way politicians react to it in the West, it becomes normalized.
As has been the issue throughout the war, there's the question of proportionality. Is it justified to kill 5 journalists when you are only targeting 1?
The Israelis have murdered Anas al-Sharif, the Al Jazeera correspondent in Gaza City, and along with him, his entire team, 5 men. That's the entire Al Jazeera team in Gaza City. This is quite clearly part of a strategy the Israelis are pursuing ahead of their entry into Gaza City to remove potential witnesses. A deliberate strategy, and indeed very often the Israelis boast immediately afterwards about having killed these people. If the Russians were murdering Ukrainian journalists in this way, and proportionate to the population, that would involve murdering thousands of journalists. If the Russians were just systematically murdering Ukrainian journalists and then boasting about it, the West's media would do something.
Mr. Putin, will you agree to a ceasefire? Mr. Putin, will you commit to not killing any more civilians?
They would organize, they would protest, they would seek to bring pressure on the Russians. They'd perhaps say, we're not going to take your press releases, we're not going to attend your press conferences unless this stops. That would definitely happen. Yet in the case of Palestinians, they report it as a news story and they give prominence to the Israeli claim that these people were Hamas operatives. When the...
You know, it's crazy that the whole entire Al Jazeera team that was there to report for Al Jazeera, which is one of the biggest news networks in the Middle East, all 5 of their employees were bombed and killed at the same time. So it's like, he's saying, like, you know, it's different if just like one journalist to accidentally get hit with a shard or a bomb or whatnot. Well, the whole team, continuing on, people that are big on Instagram, people with millions of followers on Instagram are getting bombed. They're getting targeted, and he's showing the proof of it.
Israelis themselves know damn well this isn't true.
Why is Hamas and why is Al Jazeera having terrorists on their payroll? And we need to ask them about what's going on in Gaza. But the IDF does not target journalists.
In that sense, large media...
Al Jazeera shouldn't have Hamas terrorists on their payroll. He's calling the journalist Hamas, even though they're not even from Palestine. They have nothing to do with the country of Palestine. They're there to go ahead and report the news. When you're bombing them and then you're calling them Hamas as a cover-up, like, come on.
Yeah, organizations in the West are directly culpable.
You know, everything in Gaza is Hamas. The dirt is Hamas. The buildings are Hamas. The cats and the dogs and the squirrels are Hamas. The water and the fish are Hamas. Everything's Hamas in Gaza. So as long as you kill something and call it Hamas, it's justified.
Death of Anas and of all the other journalists who've been killed in the Gaza Strip. This is part of a track record the Israelis have going back many years. Most notably in 2022, they murdered the Al Jazeera journalist Shireen Abu Akleh in the West Bank. On that occasion, they followed a familiar pattern of denying it completely, then conceding they may have had something to do with it, and then eventually admitting it was them. By then, of course, the Western media had all repeated their denials, and it had stopped being a news story by the time the truth came out. In the Gaza Strip, it's rather different in that In some instances, they effectively announce they're going to target these journalists and then brag about having killed them afterwards. Back in October, the Israelis identified 6 Al Jazeera journalists who they said were members of Hamas. What they were doing what the Israelis always do, is trying to work out what they could get away with. They were testing the waters. Are these people killable? Are they not? And I remember writing to a number of people at the time saying the world's media has to respond to them for what they are, as death threats against journalists. But of course, what the entire world's media did was simply reported as a news story.
Breaking news. This is from the Israel Defense Forces. Exposed. 6 Al Jazeera journalists have been exposed as Hamas and Islamic Jihad terrorists.
The Israelis themselves know it is absolute nonsense that these people are Hamas operatives. Take the case of Anas al-Sharif.
Okay, like, why are Hamas operatives even dressed up as press? It doesn't even make sense. They're not even going into Israel. It's not like they get a pass into Israel. It doesn't even make sense. Like, why are they walking around as Al Jazeera journalists pretending to be Hamas? So they can what? Report fake news within the area? Okay, get rid of all the fake Hamas journalists. We have cell phones. Everyone in Gaza has a phone with a camera on it. We see all the videos. We see everything. We see it on Instagram, Facebook, everything. We don't need fake Hamas operatives. Is everything Hamas? Is every video recorded in Gaza over the last 20 to 30, 40 years? Is all of those videos and reports and everything, is it all Hamas? Before Hamas existed, was it Hamas? Everything's Hamas to these guys, bro. It's crazy. They bomb and explode and kill and do whatever they want, and then they just go Hamas. And then it's okay. It doesn't even make sense, bro.
Who has been on camera pretty much constantly for the last 2 years, when he is meant to have found the time to be a Hamas operative. It's absolutely...
Yeah, see, he's been on camera for 2 years straight. Like, bro, when does he have the time to pick up a gun and be a Hamas operative? Straight up.
Absurd. They're testing the waters. They're seeing what they can get away with. And sure enough, since then, of the 6 people on that list, 2 of them have been murdered.
These governments have always tested the waters, and they will always test the waters before they launch a full experiment on a whole population. They like testing things to see how people react. Same thing as COVID 19. That whole time in 2020, that was all a test, bro. They wanted to see if you guys would stay at home. They wanted to see if you guys would stop working. They wanted to see if you would shut down your businesses. They wanted to see if you would stand 6 feet apart like good little dogs. They wanted to see if you would wear masks and breathe your own breath back into your throat. They wanted to see if you would listen like good little slaves because you fear the common cold. That's what they wanted you to go ahead and see. Guess what? Guess what? They figured out that it works. It works. Fear tactics work. So if you go ahead and post this post and say, you know, these reporters are Hamas, they could be anyone, they could be anywhere, we have to target them, we have to kill them, people get scared. They say, oh, any reporter could be Hamas, any reporter could be a terrorist in disguise. You have to get rid of them, Israeli Defense Forces. Thank you for being so intelligent. You know what I'm saying? And this is how they get away with the things they get away with. It's way more than just Israel. Trust me. It is all over the world, and it is used to control populations all over the world. And trust me, this year we're going to get another test that's going to go ahead and show them exactly. If it's not a test, this is the real deal, guys. They're going to fully take control of you. You're going to see.
By the Israelis. The Israelis will not allow international media in. They say, look, pictures are coming out anyway, but at the same time, of course, they condemn those pictures as being fake. There is a very interesting question here about how Western news organizations deal with this problem. There is a very logical way to deal with it. Al Jazeera does this. Dropsite also does this. They take local journalists and they employ them. They don't simply let them just hold forth.
You guys know the mark of the beast in the Bible, where you have to get you get a mark, right? You get marked if you're part of the Antichrist army. Well, this mark of the beast that everyone has to get, or they cannot live, right? Or they cannot, shop, or they cannot, make money. This is very, very, very much tested, like I said back in 2020, what I was just talking about before. That mark, they actually utilized a needle that they stuck in your arm, and they said that, this is an untested needle that we're going to stick in your arm. It's never been tested on humans before. We pumped this out in like 2 months, even though, vaccinations take 2 to 3 years of testing and verification from the government to let go through. We're about to give you guys something that is untested on human beings that is 3 years short of government verification, and we're going to pump it into your arm because you guys are scared, control everything that you guys do in and out, from your job to where you walk, how you breathe, and you guys are going to take this in your body. You're going to pump this in your body without even knowing what it is. This right here is preparing you for the mark of the beast. This is preparing you to be a good little boy and girl and take the mark when it's time.
Immediately onto camera, they treat them like any other employee, and there are senior management and things have to go through various editorial processes. But they make use of the very, very good and extraordinarily brave journalists on the ground. It's a very obvious question. Why doesn't the BBC do that? Why doesn't ITN do that? It's the obvious thing to be doing. On the aid flights, suddenly the news is full of these aerials of Gaza City.
Israel bans foreign journalists from entering Gaza. 15,000 feet above is the closest we get to seeing for ourselves the consequences of the war it is waging here. When we joined an airdrop last week, we were told Israel didn't want images from above being filmed or shown.
Now, I've been working with local journalists in Gaza who supply me with drone footage. There have been aerials coming out of Gaza since October 2023. And this idea that all this information is suddenly new is bogus, and it's to excuse the fact that people were not expressing the outrage they ought to be. Double Down News first reported the murder of journalists in Gaza on October the 26th, 2023, almost 2 years ago now. Good media has been reporting the slaughter of journalists all along, and it's been quite obvious from the very early days of the Israeli assault on the Gaza Strip that journalists were a specific target, not least because they often boasted about killing them. Just as it's been perfectly obvious, really, since about a week into the assault, that the aim of the assault is to make the Gaza Strip unlivable. It is
very, very interesting. This gentleman is a journalist, so he sees in what these people have sacrificed and died for, he sees that in himself. He says, I'm a journalist, so, I just want to go report the news on the ground. I want to go to the place where these things are happening, where we're being lied to by this media, and I want to report my story, right? When we go ahead and open the Bible, we see a bunch of Gospels. We see the Gospel of John, the Gospel of Luke, the Gospel of Mark, Matthew, right? We see all these different Gospels, and you can cross-reference them in the Bible, right? I'm Muslim. I believe in the Holy Quran, but I'm just using this as an example. You cross-reference the news sources or the journalism from John and journalism from Mark and Luke to go ahead and cross-verify and figure out what did Jesus actually do? What did Jesus actually say? What did Jesus actually teach, right? And this is very, very important. When Israel is the only one controlling the media, when they're not letting other outside media come in, and the only media that's coming out of Gaza is like 2-year-old clips or 6 to 10-month-year-old clips from inside Gaza, all Israel does is go, this is Hamas propaganda, Palestinians recorded it, it's fake, it's BS, it's lies. And then they just go ahead and turn the script. You need 200, 300, 400 different journalists going into Gaza and recording and showing what is happening, like this individual. And this is why he's upset. He's upset because journalists should be able to go here and report on what is happening and show the truth. And once you see 300, 400 different cross-verifications, you're going to know the Israeli government is 100% lying, and they are trying to, exactly what he just said, make the Gaza Strip unlivable and make sure nobody can see what is happening at the full extent in the meantime until it's too late, until all the Palestinians are gone, until Gaza is a complete rubble, and until they start building their own foundation on the ground. Then everyone's going to be like, oh, that's so messed up, look what happened, Israel's a liar, Israel's this, Israel's that, and it's going to be too late. So
is to effectively ethnically cleanse it. It has been blindingly obvious that that is the aim all along. The strikes we see now, every day, 30, 40, 50 people killed queuing for food, but also people still being killed in airstrikes. No one seriously believes that the genuine target of those attacks was Hamas, and not to clearly report this is grossly irresponsible by the Western media. To be very clear, the 5-man Al Jazeera crew murdered in Gaza City had nothing at all to do with Hamas. Now, some of the agencies operating in the Gaza Strip are connected to Hamas. That's very, very different from saying that their journalists are Hamas operatives. They're still journalists. And the logic would be that if you're at war with Britain under a conservative government, that Daily Telegraph journalists or Daily Mail.
You know what's funny? When America went to Afghanistan to report on the Taliban, they had to work with the Taliban to report on them. or they can't report on them. When America went to Iraq to report on the Iraqi war, they had to work with the terrorists to go ahead, and they're the ones who created them. They created the Taliban, and then they went there and filmed the Taliban and reported on the Taliban. It's actually mind-boggling. Like, if a journalist goes into Gaza, yes, they're going to go ahead and run into Hamas operatives. They're going to go ahead and run into Hamas. They run the infrastructure on what's going on there right now. So, no duh, buddy boy. When America was going into Ukraine, they're gonna talk to Ukrainian soldiers, bro. When they go into Russia, they're gonna talk to Russian soldiers. It's journalism. You go there, you're going to see those people. You're gonna see both sides. You're gonna see what's going on. It's just very, very interesting. There's everyone and everything's Hamas to Israel. They just bomb stuff and call it Hamas. Next, it's Lebanon. Next, it's Iran, and it's Hamas. Next, it's whatever they want. It's Hamas. They shoot the bird out of the sky. It's Hamas.
Journalists are fair game. It's absurd. And there's a broader point here as well, that Hamas had formed the government of the Strip for 20 years. So civil servants, refuse collectors, policemen, all of those people, yes, in effect, were connected to Hamas. To suggest that makes them a legitimate target is grotesque.
Yep.
The way the media covers things begins to infect society as a whole. When a very prominent Palestinian footballer was killed recently, UEFA put out a statement reporting his death without saying how he had died, which was quite grotesque in the circumstances. And Mo Salah, who has not been outspoken about Palestine, actually weighed in on the...
Farewell, Solomon Al-Hubaid, the Palestinian Pele. Pele is like literally one of the best soccer players of all time. They go ahead and give him this honorable message, but they don't even say anything, brother. Anything about how he actually died. Why? Because who do you think runs this organization? Who do you think runs the football organization? Huh?
This occasion and said, how did he die? Where did he die? Who killed him? In other countries, it's even worse. Germany, of course, is particularly appalling on Gaza. Bild, which is the best-selling newspaper in Germany, reported the murder of Al Jazeera's Anas al-Sharif with the astonishing headline, "Terrorist disguised as a journalist killed in Gaza." And that's Bild, Germany's best-selling newspaper. So many Western media institutions and organizations have failed to speak up. They're all culpable in their own way. I think the most appalling example I can think of is the behavior of the International Women's Media Foundation. Last year, it presented what's called the Courage in Journalism Award to Maha Husseini. Maha Husseini is a human rights worker and journalist who has been working in the Gaza Strip from the first day of the conflict and is still there. She features in our Al Jazeera film, Gaza, an extraordinarily brave woman. Once the award had been announced, some right-wing publication in Washington dredged up a couple of completely innocuous cartoons that she had shared about Israel and accused her of being an anti-Semite. In response to this, with no sense of irony at all, the International Women's Media Foundation withdrew the Courage in Journalism award from Maha Husseini. It's astonishing in itself, but in a context where you know damn well the Israelis are watching like hawks and working out who is killable and who isn't.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end it here. I know there's a couple minutes left. You guys want to go ahead and finish it, I'll leave the link of this video in the description. But as he said, the Israelis are watching like a hawk, and they're observing. The Israelis also control the largest world industries. We're talking about our transportation industries, our entertainment industries. We're talking about our banking systems. We are talking about the largest governments on the planet. They are ran by Jewish families, and that is okay. That is more than fine. God Almighty did choose the Jewish people in the Old Testament to be the people of God, to lead everybody else into the kingdom of heaven. But their Messiah came for them, and they rejected their Messiah, and they slaughtered their Messiah, and they worked with the pagan Roman Empire to kill the pure Jesus, peace and blessings be upon him, who came to bring purity on earth. What they did was they turned against their Messiah, and God had broke his covenant with them. They have been banished since then all over the world and are not allowed to return to a specific country. Everything the Jewish people are doing to this day is completely against God Almighty. They have forgotten God Almighty. Half of Israel is agnostic, doesn't even believe in God, but believes that God has promised them that land. That is actually so asinine and insane. It is mind-boggling. The issue is the Jewish ideology of religion coming falling into culture. We have no issue having the Jewish people being chosen by God and leading the Gentiles into the kingdom of heaven. What we have an issue of is this idea that you are better than everyone else and you are supremacy above everybody else on earth. And at the same time, you have forgotten God, you have forgotten your covenants, and you do not follow any of the laws that are ordained by God Almighty, but you still believe that you are chosen by God and that you have authority over all other people on earth. God Almighty has given you guys the world. God Almighty has given you guys the banking systems. God Almighty has given you guys the infrastructure. God Almighty has given you guys control of the world. And why has He given you control of the world? Because you guys wanted control of the world. You guys were chosen. So He has given you the harshest and hardest of tasks. What will you do with that task? It's not going to be easy like my life. My life's easy. I have to not drink alcohol and not do these simple things. And I have simple things to worry about. You control the world populations. For you to make it into heaven, for you to have an established relationship with your Creator, for you to come back to the covenant of God that your ancestors had promised, that the prophets of God have promised. For the Jewish people, you have to remove all control. You have to throw your banking system away. You have to throw your industries away and turn back to the Creator. God Almighty has made salvation extremely hard for the Jewish people because the Jewish people have gone extremely hard back against God Almighty. They have disowned their Creator and they have gone against His covenants. And now, yes, God Almighty has showered them with the worldly gains. He has given them heaven on earth. He has given them full control. But what are they going to do with that with their free will? And how are they going to spend their afterlife for what they have done? Thank you guys so much for coming today. God bless every single one of you. What is happening in Gaza today is so disgusting. Journalists like this need to keep continuing talking. People online need to keep continuing talking. Do not let the world forget Gaza. And inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give the power to the Muslims and the people who are physically fighting, mentally fighting, and financing the help of the Palestinian people. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and bye-bye.